chaotic and isolated to calculated and expansive, in the past few decades alone, the music scene has drastically and permanently changed, not just in America, but throughout the planet. Anything from touring out of a van and performing basement shows for friends, to writing and recording hit singles from your own bedroom can be and has been done. Much like the ever-changing genres of music themselves, the way musicians go about creating, performing, and distributing their work can't quite seem to define itself before it becomes something completely different. So why is this? What causes these massive changes throughout the years? And, if you are or were an independent musician in these certain times or places, what would it be like for you? So throughout the documentary, I'll be answering the question, what was it like being an independent musician during this time? Starting with, let's say, 30 years ago. The music scene is pretty much what you'd expect it to be at this time. With cassette tapes, vinyl records, and home radio on the scene, there's plenty of ways to listen to music. Rock and pop are the primary genres in America, dance music is still very much on the rise, and major record companies and labels are dominating the distribution of it all. At this point, music can't really be produced well without these companies and record labels to make and sell your music as a product. Which, if you look at the definition of independent music, kind of totally eliminates the do-it-yourself approach to this profession. That's not to say there's none of that. Technically, since the 1970s, independent record labels have been putting music out but with significantly less commercial success, as you could imagine. It's still so early in the game for independent music, it probably doesn't even have an official name yet. You could call it grunge, punk, alternative, indie, or even something that sounds stupid like Brit pop, and you'd be describing the same thing essentially. However, independent music is about to enter a bright new age thanks to these 3 letters and not entirely this band, but yeah, pretty much. Thanks to MTV and the rise of television as a whole, securing the spot of pretty much being the most common way for a person to consume media at this time, music has become visual. What I mean by that is, if you want your song on MTV, which is the place to go for the time of being, you need to make a music video to accompany it. And back in 1991, Nirvana left their independent record label, Sub Pop, and moved into the mainstream with their second album, Nevermind. You for sure know this one. And it wasn't until 1992 that Nevermind had passed even Michael Jackson's Dangerous to reach the top spot on Billboard's album charts. Inevitably, MTV had them on time and time again to broadcast their music to the world. They were, and I'm pretty sure remain to this day, one of the most well-known bands that has ever been in the public eye. It's hard to say exactly how well this album did, but as of now, according to a certain source, it's probably sold at least this many times. Really not bad for a band's second album. So if independent musicians have anyone to thank, it's this little guy. Again, it wasn't entirely Nirvana's success that brought indie music into the spotlight. Pixies, Blur, and even the Smiths, they were all large factors in achieving this as well. Most of them were on the scene even before the start of Nirvana, but I would surely say Nirvana has best stood the test of time, even though this band is no longer active. And I mean, come on, you've probably heard this song 1,000 times by now. When was the last time you heard a Pixies song on the radio? But for better or worse, not every band does this well. Not every band can even make it as far as to have an independent record label to leave. So what did those guys do? Let's jump ahead a bit. By now, this whole scene is kind of losing its massive appeal as more and more people get adjusted to it. It's certainly not dead by any means, but there's no more Nirvana, and there's no band that could be Nirvana at this time. So to get your name out there and make it big, you're going to need to play some gigs. You're going to need to make some tapes and some records, put the band's name on a t-shirt and sell it as merch. Also, those things Philips and Sony made in 1982 are getting pretty cool around now, so you should make some of those and people won't have to put a cassette into their Walkman or their boombox. And wow, do you have to go on tour a lot. Jeez. Like a lot. Like, this is your life now. You might be living out of a van for a little while. But the most important thing to keep in mind is you have an audience. Many people are going to attend your show. They want to hear bands like you, and they will seek you out. There's a demand for this. It's just a matter of having people notice you. So without the help of an independent label, this is where the whole do-it-yourself philosophy really takes off. And this gets big in places like the northwest of the United States, for example. Oregon, Idaho, Washington State, it gets massive there. Like, if you have a popular house in the Seattle area and it's 1997, someone's probably going to ask you if their band can play in your basement within the next few weeks. And through this physical and very much in-person community, musicians get this sense of support and feel like they're in an environment where everyone wants to help each other and succeed. I mean, I wouldn't know myself, I wasn't there. I was like 5 at the time. But according to several descriptions and interviews I've seen and heard, there is an overwhelming sense of face-to-face camaraderie. That is about to go away. Oh boy, is that about to go away. The biggest thing in arguably the entirety of music history happens. This completely takes over. And it's not immediate, but it happens. I briefly brought up CDs. They were around before the 21st century, but you're not even gonna need those soon. Going back to the late 1980s, we have that decade to thank for the creation of the MP3, a digital storage and transmission file that's essentially a sound sequence that's been compressed into a very small size. So, why is that important in 2001? Because that's what these play. And you definitely know what that is. You've had one, I bet. MP3 players now exist. Why would the populace even bother with analog audio anymore? And, unless you're doing something, you know, illegal, any song you can find on the iTunes store is 99 cents in 2003. You buy it, you have it. Pretty much instantly. The digital shift is beyond significant on its own, but what really keeps it alive is how well it works with this next thing. Now, you might not have heard of it, but some like to call it the internet. This is an incredibly unneeded portion of the video, and I'm sure everyone watching knows all of what I'm about to say, but it still needs to be said. Hitting you with some statistics here, in 2007, according to census.gov, just under 70% of every American household had a computer. About 62% had access to the internet. Eventually, this leads to streaming services like Spotify and instant music sharing and selling, but even before that, the internet was the thing that made it so you didn't have to drive to a record store anymore. You would just download whatever you wanted online, again, hopefully legally. And as technology advanced, so did the equipment, naturally. Everything from what you used to record your songs to what you played the songs on changed, pretty much. We got things like autotune, digital audio workstations, and editing, fantastic microphones that can even be used with a USB port. We can do this now. I don't know why you would want to do it, but you can do it. You had a wireless microphone for live performances so you could sing to what you were playing on your electric keyboard or synthesizer with over 1,000 different sounds to choose from on it because that's just the market standard now. And all of this is really, really cheap compared to what it would cost like 20 years ago. Bottom line is, it's affordable to be an independent musician now. And you don't have to live out of a van. In fact, it's encouraged that you don't. So, I know I've gone on for a while, but now that I've established the scene, how do you, as an independent musician, adjust to all this? I would like to know myself. Really, there's no set way. Things aren't exactly better or worse now, they're just different. You could argue it's easier, as I'm sure many people do, but in truth, it's harder in some ways. There's no more of that physical camaraderie anymore that I mentioned. Face-to-face interaction has been now rendered inconvenient because of pixels on a screen. At the same time though, major albums have been recorded in places probably smaller than the room you're watching this video in. And they can even distribute that album without having to leave. But I'm sure there's something more solid and definitive that could be used as a response. So I'll provide an example. It's 2019, and I haven't talked about anything specific that's taken place outside of America yet, so we're looking at Australia now. This is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Ever since their debut in 2010, they've been making creative and interesting alternative rock albums, and they are not showing signs of stopping. In 2017 alone, they released 5 entire full-length albums, each with a distinctive sound and theme. They all received critical acclaim by the majority of those who reviewed them. They're doing so well that their album, Polygon Dwanaland, was released for free, as in anyone could do anything with it. I bring this band up because these guys self-release their own music. They are independent. And along with all that, they create, host, and headline their own music festival in Australia every year called GizFest. and that is pronounced Gizfest. It's a hard G. If you were to tell the story of this band to an independent musician from 1989, I highly doubt that they'd believe things would change so drastically in such a relatively quick duration of time. And that's just one story. Independent musicians are constantly succeeding and failing, just like they were years ago. The thing is, they're succeeding and failing in new ways, as the music scene is consistently changing with them. And that's the point I'm trying to make. There could very well be better examples of this that I do not know of, but that's the beauty of the music scene now. It's open to you. You have opportunity. And if you search hard enough, you can really find anything.